Welcome to Boxcars 40K podcast, season 2, episode 4. Today we are going to talk about recent Ryan's win at the tournament. So I am Marcin and hello Ryan.
Hello Marcin, how's it going?
It's fine.
Good.
Yourself?
Doing good, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see that you scored a win for Custodes at the tournament. So
yeah, it was great.
Without so to say too many talk, tell us maybe what was your list and who did you play against, because you recently changed your tactics, so to say, and the list to Dreadhost.
Yeah, so make sure I got the right list here because I've been preparing for another tournament this weekend.
Yeah. Right. So the meta evolves so fast. I participate in a league, Polish league of
very good.
40K, and when I submitted, I was still using the RS list with RS. Now I'm like few iterations of my list further without RS, completely different list. So it is a pain to go back to the list that I don't think is working anymore, or it's not working as well as the new list. But that's it. That's the meta going very fast forward.
I see. Yeah, so I have my list here, and yes, it does not include the Ares gunship. I mean, I might have missed something there, but meta-wise, I don't think the Ares gunship is necessarily out of the meta yet, even with the changes to Forge World. But I feel, there's a sense in that I think less people are inclined to play it now. But I do plan on going back to it after I get some reps in with some other lists and some other units. Like I'm planning on including a Lars unit in this next tournament, so that'll be the first time I'm using a Lars Terminator. So I'm working on getting them painted right now.
Yeah. So the Ares gunship, well, playing now in the changing meta, I get a feeling that a lot of vehicles, at least in my area, is disappearing from the tables because they were too easily killed, because everyone just bringing big guns, and there is a lot of infantry, sometimes cheap infantry, sometimes more expensive, and Ares is just spectacular at killing vehicles. And if I face a list without one, well, he's very good at killing maybe Gravis armor, then it's still fine. But if it's only Primarines, then it's a bit of overkill, right?
There's some validation to that. I don't disagree. But yeah, let's. I guess let me talk about my list.
Yes,
my list here, because that does not include an Ares gunship. Does not include an Ares gunship. I think part of the whole Ares gate thing kind of went down because I was very consistently playing the Ares gunship, even kind of from the beginning. So I'm kind of taking it as encouragement to branch out a little bit, and I was able to do that successfully this past weekend, as we said. My list that I used this past weekend, it has 2 jet bike captains. My standard jet bike captain with the Arc Aquilus, the Emperor's Companion, and the Slayer of the Unclean Captain Commander trait. I did include a Misericordia, but I actually didn't use it the whole tournament because it was an addition that I made after underpointing the officiate that I had.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But
that's not your fault.
I got confused about the book's order. So
that's definitely my fault. I mean, it's easy to confuse when they're constantly shifting the points back and forth, up and down within a year's time. And it's a unit that I haven't used for many months. So I kind of went to default, and when I double checked, I didn't think to check the compendium. I just went to War of the Spider, and it rang true at 95 points, but it panned out just fine. Like I said, I didn't use the Misericordia the entire tournament. I was like, I remembered that before I remembered was reminded the Vindicators, the Assassin's point value. So it panned out anyways. So I still took my 3 Custodian Guard with the Pyrothite Spears. I took a smaller amount of Virtus Praetors in this list. I only had 5 Virtus Praetors in this list with salvo launchers. I took a Palace Grav. I took 2 Contemptor Achilles Dreadnoughts, one armed with 2 Adrathic Destructors and one armed with an Adrathic Destructor and a Lash from Stormbolter for points. That was just a points thing. If I had the points, I would go with the 2 twin Adrathic Destructors every time. But since there's not a lot to cut on this list, anything other than that I cut, it's 95 points or 55, 60 points, something like that. So it's just really hard to kind of make that switch. And then I took an Officiate with the Vindicare Assassin being the stock version. Obviously you can change that with 2 CP at any time. So I had all 4 Officiates, but I did end up using the Vindicare for all 3 of my matches.
I'm sorry that is that the full list? No,
I got 2 more, just the 2 and then my 2 Caladius tanks.
All right.
So the major change was basically from my last list was dropping the Ares gunship and taking 2 Achilles, and then upgrading the 1 captain to a bike captain as opposed to a Terminator captain. Those were the major changes that were made, and then also the inclusion of a Palace Grav attack. So just kind of, I've kind of already explained the reason for that. I did want to play an army without an Ares gunship. I have done that in the past, but I figured it was in tow with the opportunity, especially with the new Forge World stuff coming out. I really have been looking to play Achilles Dreadnoughts more. It's just they weren't quite, with the biggest sink for me was the fact that they degraded. That was the main reason why I took them out of my previous lists. Was at 10 wounds, and then degrading, at 5, it's really, really tough to justify playing them. If they had 13 or 14 wounds, like a Telemon does, then it's you're looking at a 7 wound difference at that point. Maybe if they had a 4-up save, maybe, but for me that was the biggest reason why I didn't play them. And since that got changed, it made a lot of sense to bring them back, especially with the Adrathic Destructors. They're really, really good at hunting Gravis Marines, especially Deep Strike. Yes. Yeah, with the Eternal Penitent, they get the innate reroll charges. You can spend 2 CP and do 3d6 rerolling charges, take the highest, both of them coming out of Deep Strike. So to me, it's a very strong counter to Eradicators. It's a very strong counter to Inceptors. But obviously you have to play into that because a lot of times your opponent is also going to try to deep strike those units. So with this list, I still thought keeping the Caladius tanks was really key, because in order to get at those Inceptors and Eradicators, you'd have to be able to clear screens turn 1, turn 2, possibly, in order to be able to deep strike directly into those power units with those dreadnoughts. As kind of the counter. So that was kind of the thinking behind that, rather than, and so, they kind of functionally do what the Ares gunship did in a lot of ways. The Ares gunship obviously could just snipe those units from anywhere on the board, and it has the wounds and toughness, and with the strats enough to kind of be able to take on the brunt of a lot of that firepower, and to stay out of range at times of that firepower while dishing out enough damage to pick up a unit of Eradicators or take down a unit of Inceptors. So I consider it a nominal switch. The 2 Dreadnoughts, they're obviously a little bit less tough to a certain degree. You're looking at 18 wounds between them as opposed to 22. There's not a huge sink. You're looking at a 6-up invul saves, or a 6-up Feel No Pain stock. They're toughness 7 as opposed to toughness 8. Comparably, they dish out a whole lot more firepower. If you look at the Achilles Dreadster now being flat 3 damage with 2 Adrathic Destructors, you're looking at 6 shots that are doing flat 3 damage each. That's 18 damage, which is comparable to 2 shots coming. Just one of them is comparable to 2 shots coming from the Magna Blaze Cannon with 8.
Yes.
7 plus D or 6 plus D3 damage.
And they have incredible melee potential, right? Which RS doesn't.
Exactly. They have much better melee potential, and on top of that, they're objective holding units. They're objective holding units. The Ares gunship does not hold objectives, so so those things stack up pretty quick. Obviously the downside to them is that they can get fenced, they can get screened, they can get kited to a certain degree, especially if you start playing fast Eldar armies like Harlequins. They can get screened pretty easily by things like AdMech. And so I found that the Caladius tanks were still kind of an auto take for this kind of list, just to kind of keep that option open so you can clear off those screens and get the Achilles right into combat where they need to be, and getting the maximum potential for the damage that they can put out. Custodian Guard, I used pretty much the same. Deep struck them in with the officiate, so they functionally did the same thing as they've done in the past list. They go for kind of an inconspicuous line breaker kind of move. The Vindicare was there. I took the Vindicare because I still am finding in the meta that there's not a lot of just sort of combat armies, because I think part of that's because players are kind of waiting for their codex to come out. But I think that there'll be more of a resurgence of that. I think there'll be more of a resurgence of combat-oriented chaos armies. Harlequins is arguably a combat army to a certain degree. But really the only reason why I take the Calexis is for the fight last stratagem, that it has the Soul Horror stratagem.
But you are putting out Calexis or Vindicare on the table?
So I put the Vindicare out these 3 tournament games, all 3 of these games, because all 3 of these games I fought Guard, Harlequins, and then Custodes. The Calexis doesn't really give me a lot of value in any of those armies. Now, the Imperial guy that I fought, he had a lot of Psychers, but they were kind of situated in a position that if my Calexis was there to do any work on behalf of other units, it wouldn't really matter because his lines would have already been folding. They would be getting into combat soon. So I figured the Vindicare was better as sort of a form of suppression, to kind of help to keep him from playing aggressively with his character bubbles, or trying to just max board control hard. It's a little bit harder for him to max those buffs.
My question on Vindicare would be, or a few questions, because I'm struggling now after playing a couple of games versus combat-oriented Marines or melee-oriented Marines. The bubble from the Apothecary, although it's only 6, feel no pain, it really messes up our economics of shooting Primaris with Iliastus. If you imagine that I mapped it out, that our Iliastus, our Caladius can take down 6 Primarines, just as a mathematical, if he's shooting no cover, etc. That's 6 Primaries dead. But if he, let's say that's he saves 1 on a 6, and every 6 rolls he will save 1. This means now we lose 2 shots, so instead of 6 we'll kill 5, and this will happen 2 or 3 times. This means instead of 6 we'll kill 3 or 4. This is a huge difference for our very light army, right? So after those games I decided I need to have some kind of character removal, because I tried to do it with bikes, and this did cost me a lot, because he will always screen the character. I have to, fight my way through. It's not so easy. And I'm contributing probably a captain on a bike and a unit of bikes, which is a lot of points. And it's not really guaranteed success. So I'm really wondering about the Vindicare, if he can, if he can do it, if he can take down that one character, but specifically, but probably other that will give some similar bubbles. Yeah,
I think the Vindicare definitely has a place for that. I don't think it's the maximum option that we have, especially against combat armies, because in combat armies the characters tend to be coming towards you, and so that does kind of position, that allows to position the Virtus Praetors and things like that to get at them a little bit easier. And obviously, the Vindicare being a long range tool, it's a little bit counterintuitive to play a Vindicare into that, because the Vindicare, can't maneuver really in order to be effective. So you're either trying to guard the Vindicare, which allows your enemy to maneuver on you better and get those charges, or you roll terrible and now you've sort of kind of painted yourself into a corner. For me, like I said, in my matchups, it wasn't as bad because it wasn't an issue, because I was aggressing my opponents in every one of those matchups, with exception to the Adeptus Custodes one. But even in that one, I was setting myself up for that, and I was bringing him in I brought him in as a deep strike in that one, as opposed to the game against the Imperial Guard where I started him on the table. I forgot about him turn one. Completely forgot about him. Didn't shoot him, which was kind of a bummer. But live and learn, no worries. But to me, he's just. But that was just kind of like another sign to me of just like he doesn't jive great in my mind as like a pivotal piece of the the whole army's kind of motion. He's there, he does something, but it does kind of feel like it's a little bit out of whack. It does feel like it's kind of one of those misnomer things. So that's why I started deep striking him, at least, because then he's going to pick up line breaker points. He can do teleport homer, but even then, though, the Calexis is really more oriented towards that, particularly because he's harder to kill. Only being able to hit him on sixes. It's a lot easier than you don't feel as bad hiding a Calexis, somewhere and not doing anything. So it's just like he's just there to survive and do teleport homer. But if it's a Vindicare, it's kind of like, I wish I could shoot with my Vindicare. It kind of feels like a waste, But, he almost, in the mirror match with the Custodes, he came in with the Pyrotite Spears and almost shot his Vexilla off the board. He got him down to one wound coming in, at a -1 to hit. So like that could have been a huge swing for me, so he's got a lot of potential and I'm not opposed to using him. But I'm looking in to try to use the Calexis more, as sort of my stock, as my basic assassin. And then if I end up in a situation where it's like, no, it'd be really good to have a Vindicare this matchup, I can spend that 2 CP if I need to. But I'm still trying to figure out the best economy for that, so that I'm not spending a ton of time trying to make that decision during deployment, that I can just kind of look at the list and go, okay, this is the officiate that I'm going to bring today. Do I have the CP, or do I need to use the CP for other things? And just kind of go through some basic list patterns to kind of figure that out. Haven't done that yet, but I'm kind of playtesting in some of these TTs just, while I can, while there's still things going on. Let me think here. So my new list, I don't know if we should move on to a different list yet. Do you have any other questions about the lists that I played that comes to mind?
Yeah. One question, because it's a list a bit set up because of the red host to teleport in and charge with 3d6 dice, right?
Yes, sir.
I did a math on that, and it's with a reroll, it's 75% chance. So if you have 3 charges lined up, so probably 2 of them will get in and 1 is iffy, let's say.
Yep.
And in my personal experience, it doesn't work that well, because I roll terribly, and usually out of 3 charges, just 1 gets in. No, I'm not sure how was your personal experience in those charges getting in versus not getting in?
I think I rolled 100%.
Okay. Actually. So somewhere in the world, it evens out. When I fail my charge, you will make 1.
Yeah. I rolled consistently and slightly above average for that. But there was other times though that I was wholly screened out from where I wanted them to be. particularly against the guard. I was trying to get I lost line breaker points because he just screened out his entire deployment zone, which was fine because it made it easier for me to kind of pick his army apart. And it still led to victory in the game, but it wasn't ideal, for me in how I wanted to use those guys. But it worked out good, and in hindsight, I've considered some other things. That was also one of the kind of the jank issues that I was having with this list, was that the 3 custodians with the pyrethite spears, they're really designed to be deep struck. I don't like using them when I can't deep strike them just because of their lack of range. A lot of times they're just standing around. And I don't like when my units are just standing around and kind of waiting, when they could be doing better, more capable things, So that was one of the things that I probably would have traded out. If I had some Sagittarum, I probably would have used Sagittarum in this list. It's 30 points. I think it's 30 points less. They're 50 points apiece, I think, if I remember right, the Sagittarum.
Yes, correct. Without Misericordia.
Yep. Yeah. So, instead of 3 Custodian Guard, I think having 3 Sagittarum and then sync, I'd be able to bring in another Drafted Destructor, and that would leave me with 20 points left over, which then I could buy, 3 Misericordias for the Sagittarum, which would leave me about 10 points, and I could just throw on Misericordias at my Bite Captains as well. And that would get it pretty close. I think that would have been a much more efficient use of the economy of this list, just because it was always best to deep strike the 2 dreadnoughts. It's a very powerful alpha kind of style of strike. It's good because it plays Custodes. It's very consistent. They're a lot harder to kill now. They don't degrade. I guess they're not particularly harder to kill, but with the -1 damage thing, they are, to a certain degree, significantly harder to kill. Against things like Blade Guard, Blade Guard are only doing 1 damage against them. Things that,
correct.
Things that.
I only used one in my list, but I was very happy with how Ahilus works. So.
Yeah, that was kind of the big, I guess, ticket item for me that I would change in this list is just Sagittarum. I would take Sagittarum. The fact that they dish out flat 3, flat 2 damage at range now. 9 shots, flat 2 damage. It's pretty good, for 150 points. And then, flat 3 damage shots at 18 inches, is pretty good.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't feel so bad then kind of parking them on a backfield objective, because I know that they're going to be in the fight in some regard. And in a capable regard, they're designed to shoot targets long range, so that would give, that would keep me at the patrol detachment, which is kind of what I'm looking at. Better economy is way of just consistent shooting, as opposed to pyrethite spears, who often end up in some back corner shooting at a screening unit or something with their pyrethite spears, since there's no tanks in the field, or they're all screened out. Or they're not behind enemy lines anymore. There's a lot of combination of things that kind of put them out of action. I haven't regretted taking them. They've always had a good role. They've always done something important. But I think in this list particularly, where the dreadnoughts are kind of functionally doing that, and then the officiate can deep strike in on his own without having to use the From Golden Light stratagem. That 3-man, the 2 dreadnoughts and the officiate, I think really are a good combination. With a Calexis, the Calexis, if you do fail those charges, you put a Calexis with them. You can do the Soul Horror thing if he tries to line up a counterpunch on you. If you do deep strike next to Centurions or something, trying to charge some Centurions, and you fail your charges, real horribly. There you have a Calexis then. So if he's thinking about trying to go and punch you, you can make them fight last. That's a good way, I think, of preserving that a little bit against some reprisal. I think shooting armies, failing charges against shooting armies, I think is the worst deal. But they do have enough shooting, between the 2 of them, that they can. I think that they can do some damage. They can do some damage coming in as well. So, and then combine that with the support from the Caladius tanks. It's a pretty good combination. I really like it. Like I said, I think the only jank in this list that I've found is because you're spending those 3 CP to, put the Achilles in. Those Pyrothite spears aren't quite getting their points worth. So,
yeah.
The Palace Grav, I try to use the Palace Grav as kind of a move blocker kind of thing, but I've still been really kind of struggling with that finagle, trying to figure out how to line up that counterpunch for the stooping dive. Has been a little bit of a struggle while still kind of fencing your zones while holding objectives. So I'm still trying to straighten that out as well. So I would like to do, some more repetitions with this list as well. But I'll have to wait until I get some Sagittarium, I think.
Yeah, I feel like that Palace is a great for his points, but when I play him, I feel I would like him to do more, but then I have to realize he's only costing 95 points. It's same as one bike, so I couldn't expect that one bike will do more than one shot, and he has 2 shots like flat 3, but the statistics don't really work because you have just 2 dice. You can easily not wound both or miss one with a single one, etc. So I cannot you shouldn't expect too much from one 95 point model, right?
Yeah. So my thinking in that regard was because I think for 95 points, a Virtus Praetor is in some ways arguably better. I mean, it's more of an offensive use of the points. The Palace Grav has a lot more defensive capabilities in that it has twice as many wounds.
Yeah.
It's got a longer range on its weapon.
And toughness 7, which is not such a big difference, right? No, it has toughness 6, right?
It is toughness 6.
Yeah,
it's the same toughness,
so it's the same toughness. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you're looking at twice as many wounds, and it is a standalone unit. So when someone is thinking about using that unit of Eradicators, he's going, okay, this is going to be super overkill, shooting at this one Palace Grav tank with my whole unit of Eradicators. So it kind of has a sort of that sort of a misnomer role where it can kind of it's preserved on account of the fact that it's not so dangerous a unit, and it's semi hard to kill compared to some other units. So it has some survivability there that the Virtus don't have. Virtus Praetors are red flag. You need to kill the Praetors before they get to my lines kind of thing. The Palace Grav, a lot of people are like, no, I can comfortably ignore that Palace Grav for 1 or 2 turns, no problem. Mm-hmm. So if they're shooting at it, it's usually because they don't have other targets or they're trying to get the most out of, their anti-tank stuff or something, or they're trying to get a secondary point early on, before things get, into the later turns. But I like the Palace Grav. I think it's got a lot of play, but it's just trying to fit it properly and deploying it and keeping the Virtus Praetors close enough to it that it can do stooping dive, and trying to figure out how to, like I said, keep the screens up and keep using terrain. It is kind of a juggle that I'm still trying to perfect, but and there's 2, and rather than having 6 Virtus Praetors, I take the 5, so they're not vulnerable to blast, for that one turn shooting. Also made some sense. So
have you considered Venatari? Because their points dropped with their shields, so now they cost 55 with the shield, with the buckler, and if they have a buckler, they have 2 up save now, so they are as good as the rest of our infantry, 2 up, 4 up. And they have incredible pistols. Their pistols are strength 6, range 18, 2 shots, 6 minus 2 AP2, and 2 damage. So if you use a strat, 1 CP strat that doubles their shots, because it doubles also pistols, and you get 20 shots with exploding 6s. This unit costs then 275, so it's arguably a very cheap unit in our standards, so to say.
I agree. I don't think they get exploding 6s, though. I think that's only in combat. Are you thinking for the All-Seeing Annihilator trait?
No. I think that they have let me double check that. They have, or at least had, a built-in exploding sixes on the pistols.
Oh, really? I don't.
Yes,
I've never heard of that.
it is kinetic destroyer. When resolving an attack made with this weapon, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional. This with a pistol. So whenever you are in combat or in shooting, you can use the pistol, and on sixes you have additional hit.
Is that from the new compendium?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. But in the old one, it was the same. So.
I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, this is incredible rule. So it gives you additional 17% of hits.
Yeah. So I've been looking at Venatori. I have been looking at Venatori for screening reasons, because I'm still trying to figure out that stooping dive and what is the best way the stooping dive.
And it combines well with your way of playing, because they are pretty fast unit. They are 12-inch movement, so a bit slower than the bikes, but still very fast.
Not by much. Yeah, not by much. And usually when you're setting up that stooping dive, you're not using that full movement anyways. And having a smaller base, allows for a more effective screen where you can. It's a lot easier to jump over that unit or around that unit or through that unit to get the vertebrates into combat if they get charged. That's really good. I can't believe I missed that.
I used them a few times. I think sometimes they were all-stars, sometimes they were not so good. But the moments they were not so good, I think I used them too aggressively. It's not a kind of frontline unit. It's not. They are not Terminators.
Right.
So they are only 3 wounds, but they are very cheap. They are very efficient for their points, I would say. It's one of the.
They have an innate deep strike, which is great.
Yeah.
It's a CP saver. The fact, the pistols, like you said, the pistols are so good. They're kind of like in a lot of ways, they're kind of like a fight first ability, because your shooting phase, comes before your combat phase. So, so if you get in, if you make a charge and it's your opponent's turn now, you're still locked in combat. I guess you would have already shot. I guess I wouldn't come into play too much.
Yeah, sometimes if they survive the melee, depending on with whom. If, for example, if you are fighting Necron, then it's perfect, because that fight will not finish very fast. So you are tied up with Necron blob, like 20 guys. You charge them, you shoot them, charge them. You will probably not kill all of them. In their round, they will not kill you. So in your round again, you have a chance to use your shooting first and then attacks. So you double your amount of shots, and that's very useful in those instances, right? When you fight an opponent that will not die so easily, but it's also not doing that much to you.
Yeah, I agree. The biggest reason why I'm obviously not using them now is just lack of having them. I don't have any Venatori models. So Forge World is still way behind in production stuff. I checked the other day to see if Sagittarum or Venatori were they're out of stock. So I looked around a little bit online, didn't see anything. So if
you were local, I could send you a few of unassembled ones, because I ordered way too many, and I have one set of Sagittarium and one that upgrade for Sagittarium, and one set of Venatari unit unassembled. But unfortunately, we are on the other side of the world.
Yeah. How many did you say?
I think I have a set for 5 Sagittarium, because that's the set, and I think I have 4 Venatari. I would have to double check, but unfortunately, I think they are without. I just have them with spears.
Okay.
Well, anyway, we can talk about it later.
Yeah, that sounds good. But yeah, I'll keep looking around too. But yeah, I agree. The Venatori, I think, have a lot of play for Virtus Praetors and things like that. If I drop for this list, and I drop the Custodian Guard and After I switched the Custodian Guard out for Sagittarum, and then I dropped the Palace Grav, and then maybe drop a Virtus Praetor and the Vindicare, I should have enough points to have a small unit of Venatari.
I think if you drop Palace and one bike and then Vindicare, then you have enough for a 5-man unit. 275.
They're 55 points, you said?
Yes. So 275 is the 5-man unit.
Oh yeah, that would be plenty then. That would be 290. Yeah, that would be plenty. I probably wouldn't have to do that. So if I did like the Vindicare and the Palace, which would be 195, and then I use the 30 points or 20 of those points and put them in, that would be 215. So that would be four.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, I'd have a few points. I'd maybe drop in a Jatha Disruptor or something. But that would be great, having a 4-man unit of those guys to kind of complement the Virtus Praetors, to kind of do, some extra shooting, and then even getting into combat. But then more or less functioning as a screen, for other combat armies.
Yeah.
With those tanks kind of doing the back side of the fence, and then having the Achilles prepared to kind of jump in, and then also just being able to deep strike them along with the Achilles as sort of a screen as well.
Mm-hmm.
Would also be a move to make. That brings some play to the table. I think would be great to invest in a unit of them. Kind of moving forward, but not there yet. I'm still, really working through the Virtus Praetors, and there's a lot of other things, a lot of other units here that have a lot of good play, and just trying to figure it out. So, any other questions about the tournament?
Yeah, maybe you could tell me something about how did your matchup with versus Harlequins went, because I'm really interested. I haven't played it. I just seen some games online that didn't go well for Custodes, so I'm very happy you won. But how did it work out? Tell me.
Yeah, so this was one of the matchups where the Castellan's Mark all really came into play. It did help me against the Astra Militarum that I played, but this one was, I think, the definitive one. So with Harlequins, when you're playing as Custodes, especially this list particularly, you really, really want to prevent them from kind of amassing on your strong points. So had he played a little bit more lopsided in his deployment, and really just kind of emphasize one side and just try to sweep a flank, I think the game would have went a lot better for him. But because of the Castellan's Mark, he didn't know where I was going to redeploy. And I had enough power units on the table that it could have been anywhere. It could have been any unit, So he kind of tried to play it safe, I guess, in a way. He center deployed all his boats, and then he put one bike unit on the far flank of one and one bike unit on the far flank of the other. So the way that I kind of drew him into that is that I put one Caladius tank on a far flank, and then I put one Caladius tank kind of close to the center, which kind of meant then, and then I deployed my bike captain with the Castellan's Mark last. So he doesn't know where this bike captain's going to go, and then he can redeploy any unit within 6 inches. So he's eyeing up these 2 tanks for his bikes. And then I put the Palace Grav right next to the middle Caladius tank. And then I put an Achilles Dreadnought behind cover next to my left wing Caladius tank. So he kind of knew at that point, like, as he was, deploying that, I had sort of an asymmetric deployment, and I had one wing covered, but I could easily then deploy those Virtus Praetors on that far other right flank and still have him spread out in kind. And that's where my army wants. Again, that's really where my army wants to have Harlequins, is when they're spread out and I'm going 1-to-1 with their units, especially like Virtus Praetors versus bike units. Like, it's a mismatch that I can really take advantage of. Like, Virtus Praetors will wreck Harlequin bikes all day long. Whether they're shooting salvo launcher or whether they're using their flak burst, their flak burst missile profile, or their
So you would use the flag burst instead of Melta rockets, right? Versus them?
It kind of went back and forth. When I was shooting at a bigger unit, I used the flak burst, but once he was down to like one or two bikes, I would just use the salvo launcher. Just use the salvo launcher version, because at that point you really only need one to get through to kill it. When you have a big unit, it pays then to do the flak burst, where you do the burst missile net, where you're re-rolling wounds. You're not taking any negs to hit.
Yeah, that was my next question. If you would use that burst missile net stratagem.
Yeah. Yep. So that was my opening volley. So I ended up deploying the bike's strong side. I ended up deploying the bike's strong side with the bike captain, and then winning first turn. So if I hadn't gotten first turn, I might have swung the bikes on the other side just to throw him for a loop to see what he would do. But I didn't have to. So basically my redeploy just basically had me moving and engaging his far left bikes right away. And then sort of Caladius tanks just shot at certain targets, did nominal damage for the most part. I killed 4 of his 5 bikes, and then did some plink damage on a couple of his boats, and that was about it for that first turn. But it was enough to sort of bait him in then to doing a hard push right off the bat, because that Virtus Praetor unit then was positioned to jeopardize one of his objectives. So we played, I think it was a surround and destroy, where there's three across the Donald Warda style deployment. 3 objectives across the Donald Warda style deployment. One center, one on the side, one on the side. So I kind of left the far right one. I think if I remember right, but so it was enough. Getting that first turn, really doing some damage to that bike squad was enough to sort of draw him in fast, and then try to take on everything at once. And that's what really won the game for me. He ended up basically just trying to get fusion pistols off and stuff. He just came in real close, shot a bunch at my dreadnought with the fusion pistols. He survived a volley, came in with some neuro disruptors, shot at my bikes, did nominal damage with another unit, and then that last bike came in, and then I did stooping dive. So he was all just he lined these 3 units up, 2 boats, 2 units inside, and the last bike right in front of my Virtus Praetor unit. And then my dreadnought also, who was sitting on an objective, was right in front of a boat. So I paid 1 CP to heroically intervene with the dreadnought into his unit, since he was on the objective. I think that's what I did, if I remember right. I might have not done that. I was thinking about that. Let me look here a second. But I did stooping dive. And the bikes did kill one of the boats. Yeah, I did Fraternity of Heroes. I was trying to remember the name of the stratagem.
Yeah,
because the dreadnought doesn't heroically intervene, but my bike captain, I think my bike captain heroically intervened as well. I can't remember exactly. Mm-hmm. So dreadnought. Now that I'm thinking about it, the dreadnought definitely heroically intervened using Fraternity of Heroes, because he was within an inch of an objective, or 3 inches. He was within. What am I reading here? Okay, so let's see here. Select one. Oh, he doesn't have to be within an objective. I don't know why I thought.
Yeah, that. The objective is the interrupt fight next thing for one. Yeah.
I guess I conflated those 2 things, but it doesn't matter. It was a legal move. I just so I don't have. That's good. I'm glad I figured that out before my next matchup here. But so I basically killed those 2 boats, everything inside, and that final bike. And then in my turn, I was able to send the Virtus Praetors forward and kill another boat with 5 infantry in it, 5 or 6 infantry in it, that was sitting on one of his objectives. So Caladius tank stayed put. The dreadnought stayed put. in his turn, after he did that, he also charged my Palace Grav with his bikes after shooting my Caladius tank and killing my Caladius tank with a bunch of fusion and haywire. So that center Caladius tank didn't live. But then they charged my Palace Grav, and my bike captain went after that unit of bikes. And it was crazy because in that combat, he did 4 double damage wounds.
Oh,
he
Jesus!
did 5 wounds, and I rolled 4 6s to wound. And so I was like, yes,
that sounds serious damage.
But then he rolled 4 out of 5. All 4 of the saves that he rolled, he made all 4 of his saves for the double.
Oh no!
Yeah, and then and so just the one normal damage went through, and he did kill a bike with that. So he killed 1 bike out of that, but then he fell back to that center objective because then I was kind of pushing out to the flank with the bike captain. He ended up sending a unit of infantry after him. But then when it came to my turn 2, my other dreadnought came in with the Pyrethite spears, and they went for his center objective. So by the end of turn 2, I basically held, both made their charges. I basically held 2 of his objectives and 2 of my objectives by turn 2. So then at that point, the game was pretty much won. I killed over 50% of his forces. He had, a wounded bike unit left. He had one boat left. Some infantry smattering here and there, a character that my Vindicator almost killed, sniping out of the and then was just picked up by the dreadnought. So it was a brutal game. It was a brutal game.
Sorry, during the course of the tournament, did your Vindicator manage to kill any characters?
No, he didn't kill any characters.
God damn it! Because then you can for 0 CP get 1 CP, right?
Yeah, you would be able. So the closest he got was when he almost sniped the Vexilla.
Yeah.
But then the next turn, the Vexilla had moved behind obscuring terrain as he was charging towards my line to drop the Alaris bomb in. And then at that point, I was basically using him for because my Pyrophytes had to go out of the deployment zone after an objective and his Virtus Praetors. So I needed him behind enemy lines. I put my Achilles behind enemy lines. So those two units needed to stay behind enemy lines, and then my assassin I needed to use for teleport homer.
Yeah.
So he just didn't do anything the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Other than that. So
yeah, but generally when you place him out of deep strike, do you worry much about him not being shot by? So have a character protection.
Yeah. Actually, I did forget. So he did shoot He did shoot in turn 5 because in turn 5 I didn't need to do teleport homer anymore.
Okay.
Since you can't score teleport homer after the command phase, so it's in the command phase. So he scored his last teleport homer in turn 5, and then he shot in the shooting phase. And he did snipe an Alaris Terminator. After his Alaris came in and just wrecked my lines, he did unleash the lions, so all of his Alaris were running around as single models, and he did manage to snipe for grind them down. Kill. He sniped an Alaris Terminator, but yeah, I mean, yes, it was kind of disappointing, and that's the issue with the officiates is they fail their missions sometimes, and it's just kind of like a big letdown. But they definitely played in as far as a psychological effect. It did pressure my opponent to really push into that center move. Had I just positioned my Virtus Praetors slightly back from where they had been, it would have been a stooping dive into his Alaris, and it would have been the end of the game. But I got a little bit too close. He sent his bike captain in to kind of squish me together a little bit before he brought his Alaris, which was really good. It's a great move. When I repositioned my Virtus Praetors after killing the bike captain with salvo launchers, I positioned them to charge him if he didn't die. So I should have been a little bit more cagey and just relied on a dreadnought or something to go and attack on him rather than in the kitchen sink at him. I just got a little bit I just layered the reassurances a little bit too much, and my vertebrators were just a little bit too close to that forward deployment line. So then, and I was kind of like, they weren't terribly out of position. So what ended up happening was he rolled a 6 on his advance for his Vexilla, and then he dropped his Alaris in 3 inches from my lines, and it was an 8-inch charge to my vertebrators. So 8-inch charge, 3d6 take the highest with a reroll, with a CP. I was kind of like, these aren't. It's not a given charge. It's not like a flat charge, but it is. It's very doable. So had I positioned them 3 inches back, 4 inches back, and had made it an 11-inch or a 12-inch charge, I don't think he would have tried. I think he would have just went for those screening units that I had. One of the bike captains, the Dreadnought that was on the table, or that was in my deployment zone, and then the Palace Grab. I think he would have just went after those 3 units, and then my Fortis Praetors would have been in position to shoot their salvos. My Caladius tank would have shot into them. They would have charged, and I think that would have been pretty much the game then at that point. So losing, him getting that charge was a big swing for him. And then also just the fact that my Vindicator didn't quite kill his Vexilla. If his Vexilla would have died, it would have been fine. It would have been fully screened from any kind of Alaris attack where they were positioned. So just little things like that, but he served his purpose. I mean, he scored, 8 points for teleport homer. 8 points for teleport homer. Killed something for grinding down. So he scored 11. He scored 11 of my points.
So he's done his part, just a different way we would imagine, probably.
Right. Oh, I mean, and he also scored line breaker points for me. So
correct.
He scored a ton of secondary points, pretty much doing nominal work. I mean, he didn't snipe 3 characters off, or kill Trajan Valoris or something. Like, he did nominal work in that regard. Scored a ton of secondaries. Could I have used the Calexis? Probably. But my thing was like, but do I need a Calexis at this point? Like, he's not going to come after my Calexis with Adeptus Custodes infantry. So like, I kind of looked at that matchup and was like, the Vindicator is the way to go against this matchup, because the Vindicator, he has targets. He has a lot of characters that have really good invul saves that could use some whittling down before I get into combat. So I was like, Vindicator is the way to go. Teleport homer, I was kind of like, I'll use the Pyrothite spears to do teleport homer. Just because he fenced the matchup really good. He didn't have a lot of characters. He only had 3 characters. He didn't have any vehicles really, except the Telemon. Obviously didn't have any Psychers. So I was kind of stuck with either going for the 9 and assassinate and having to try to kill Trajan Valoris and a souped up bike captain.
Which is not great.
Which is even with the list that I have, it's not a given. It's not one of those things of like, this is something I can do pretty much whatever he does, rather than, line breaker teleport homer. It's like, he can stay in his deployment zone and try to fence that, but then I win the game on primaries. Then I still get grinding down because I'm shooting his units off the table as I go, and then I'm getting charges in the end of the game and possibly picking up those points anyways. So teleport homer to me was the only given. It was a better given. If I get it twice, I still get 8 points, which is almost 9 points. And like I said, it's pretty much a given that I'm going to get that if he's playing into my army, which he has to as a Dread Host infantry army, if he wants to win the game. So that's kind of the way I went with that. There's some other, like I said, but even with that, though, I didn't even think about the Calidus Assassin, which might have been a good play. He was pretty much out of CP by turn 2, so maybe chipping away at some CP with her special ability would have helped me prevent certain things from happening. Maybe he wouldn't have used that, the Dread Host thing. I don't know. Having Trajan on there and getting the free stratagem was really strong. So I don't think that would have affected too much. But the fact that she also ignores invulnerable saves might have been good. But still, I don't think I don't think so, because with the Vindicare wounding on 2s, is better than her wounding on 5s and gets 5 attacks, sure, but she's wounding on 5s. It's flat 2 damage, sure, but you're looking at 2 to 4 damage, if she rolls average, versus the Vindicare, who's looking at D3 damage, which is not nominally better, but then plus headshot. So you're still looking at a little bit better damage output, and you're not fighting then with Trajan Valoris in combat. With the Vindicare. The Vindicare can just sit back and shoot stuff. The Calidus has to go in to combat to do that. But maybe like coordinated, she might be effective enough to do that. She might have been the play to go with the because she does have the neural disruptor as well, so that's possibly D3 mortal wounds included. So I would have to say, I would still probably go with the Vindicare, because the line breaker points and teleperformer thing was really relying on that. And if my Achilles hadn't gotten crazy lucky against his Telemon, I don't know if I mentioned this yet. Did I mention this yet?
No, you didn't.
Oh, so he deep strikes his Telemon in with his Alaris bomb, and he goes basically after my Achilles had come in and killed one of his last units of Custodian Guard, taking his backfield objective. His Telemon comes in, makes a charge in my Achilles. And so then he makes that charge, and he also makes the charge with the Alaris, which tagged my Palace Grav, both my bike captains, my Praetors, and an Achilles Dreadnought.
Nice. Was he playing Dreadhorse as well?
What's that?
Was he playing Dreadhorse as well?
He was playing Dreadhorse as well. He was in 6 inches of his banner, which was +1 attack, and he was exploding 6s. So I was kind of like, yeah, this is not looking good for me right now. This is looking pretty grim, actually. But there was a saving grace there, because he charges in with his Telemon Dreadnought. He charges in with Alaris. He goes first with the Alaris, because obviously if he doesn't, there's a bunch of stuff that could kill a bunch of Alaris that are going to be striking, because I have the CP to interrupt. So he strikes the Alaris first, so I have to, basically, okay, well, I'm going to try to kill this Telemon. I interrupt with the Achilles, because he's got no answer then for me that backfield. I'm holding 2 of his backfield objectives. I'm gonna win on primaries alone if he doesn't he doesn't do something about it. And the only thing he's got is a Telemon. So I go with the Achilles. He does 4 wounds on the Achilles, interrupting 6 attacks, 4 wounds. He fails all 4 of his saves. I do 14 damage exactly, and we forget about the Feel No Pains completely. Both of us just completely forgot.
This happens to me all the time. I forget about the Feel No Pains on the Dreadnoughts.
We both, it was both like that. Like on the one hand, I think he was just shocked with disappointment, and I was just kind of like really happy that Telemon was dead. That both of us just were like, he was super disappointed, I was super relieved, and we both just were not thinking about Feel No Pains at that point. Because it was exactly 14 damage, and it was a 4. He rolled a 4 failed saves. So there was just sort of this crescendo moment, and it was such a swing in the game for us, because I was about to get, I just got my backside crushed by a bunch of Alaris. So there was a sense of equity there as well. There that kind of swung back into my favor. That basically kept me in the game at that point. I think I still could have won the game had his Telemon came and just punched my Achilles to death. My Pyrothite Spears were still hanging out there. So even if he had made a couple of Feel No Pains or even a couple of his saves, I think they, with their Pyrothite Spears, probably could have done it. But it would have been hard nut to crack. And my Vindicare would have been kind of safe. I mean, he could have hid in the backfield because there was a big line of obscuring terrain piece that he could have hidden behind, and it would have forced him off the objective if he wanted to come after the Vindicare. So I still would have ended up scoring those points. Primaries would have been a little bit rough at the end of the game. I did score 15 primary. I just scored max primaries. I probably would have dropped 5 or 10 from that. It was still a pretty wide spread, 80 something to 39 or 40, something like that. So I probably could have afforded to lose that fight even, but just on the basis of the damage I was able to do the first couple of turns and then keeping the board control. from then on out.
Yeah, but still, if he rolled those 14 dice, he would probably get 3 6s. So Telemon surviving on 3.
Yeah, right.
It's not a great Telemon anymore.
No.
So he dies next round. So
yeah, and I still had at least one. I had both my Caladius tanks would have been able to shoot at him at that point.
Yeah.
So instead, of course, I shot at the Alaris, and they did nominal damage to the Alaris. He did Archaic and Genetic Alchemy, and then Auramite and Adamantium. So a lot of my shots plinked off, and then my Blaze Cannons rolled double ones on their wound roll. So I killed one guy in my next shooting phase, and I had one Virtus Praetor left. I had my Blight Captain left, and that was it. Everything else was pretty much dead. So I just held objectives, and I fell back with my captain. He kind of jumped behind a Caladius tank, and then my Virtus Praetor shot a salvo launcher and charged in. Got him down to 5 Alaris, and then so I had my 2 Caladius tanks kind of spread out, holding 2 different objectives, kind of forcing him to unleash the lions, basically. And then Trajan was coming up behind him, and so that's what he did in his next turn 3. He unleashed the lions, charged one of my Caladius tanks, charged the second Caladius tank, killed and exploded. The one detonated and killed his Vexilla, and did some damage to the 2 Alaris on that side. I think actually killed an Alaris because one of the Alaris had some damage on him as well. So killed an Alaris and then killed a Vexilla, and then the other 2 hit the other Caladius tank, which managed to survive because he wasn't getting any of the reroll buffs or anything, because they were further out than the other ones. So my Jetbike captain jumped over, killed one of them, and then the tank shot the other one off of the tank. If I remember right, I can't remember exactly. I think the tank might have died. I can't remember. I'm thinking about it now because I think he conceded after that. I don't think we played.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we just counted it up because after the Telemon was dead, and I was basically holding his backfield. I didn't have a lot left either. I had my bike captain on that side, but it was basically Trajan Valoris and 2 wounded Alaris Terminators, and that was it. And I had my Achilles on an objective. I had my Pyrothite Spears on an objective. He just had the one objective, and then I had my bike captain on another objective. So we could have done a fight between my bike captain and Trajan Valoris. I'm trying to remember for some reason I remember him dying, but I can't. My bike captain dying, rolling badly, but I think that might have been from the guard fight that I fought.
No worries, Ryan. Ryan, we are closing to the end, but I have one more question.
Yes,
are you happy with Dread Host, how it looks right now? You don't miss the Shadow Keeper's shot with -1 strength?
I like them both, honestly. The Exploding Sixes was nice. It didn't come into play a ton, but I really did like the deep striking Achilles and being able to get 3-6 on that charge, re-rolling with the Eternal Penitent. I really like that as just sort of a switch out from the Ares gunship. So this is definitely a list that I have in the toolbox now. So I still have my Shadow Keepers Ares gunship list, ready to go at any time. My goal is to kind of build a repertoire. I'd like to have 3 or 4 tournament lists that I keep consistent, and that I can switch depending on the meta and how the meta goes at any given time. That I can switch out, so I'm not, so I can focus on tactics and I can focus on learning some of the other armies and what's the best way to defeat them, versus trying to really optimize lists. If I have 3 or 4 lists that are optimal, I can just kind of switch those out.
Keep the opponents on their toes so they never know what you bring.
And that too, yeah. So one of the disadvantages of my past kind of style of play was people kind of knew what I was going to bring, especially when people started featuring my lists in articles. It was kind of like people kind of knew what I was going to bring. So it's kind of, I do need to keep branching out a little bit. I do need to keep experimenting with some units. Like I said, I would love to bring in some Venatori, Sagittarum as screeners, but I don't think I'm really going to get away from the Virtus Praetors. I don't think I'm really going to get away from Caladius tanks too much. I do have a list. We don't have time to talk about it, but maybe we'll talk about it after. I do plan on bringing in a different list to this coming tournament that doesn't have any tanks in it whatsoever. It is Dreadhost, but it has no tanks. It just has one
Terminator bomb.
It does have the Terminator bomb, but it only has one Achilles Dreadnought in it. But it has 9 Virtus Praetors in it.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, let me know. Maybe next time we can talk how it went, how that list feels, because that's completely different. That gives that takes away the opponent's points for killing your Dreadnought.
Down. Yep.
I had one thing that I forgot to ask, because you mentioned RS gate. That there is a. So how do you go about it? For anybody that doesn't know, there are some people that think that RS does not fit in the deployment zone, and so you shouldn't be able to deploy it.
It sounds like ITC is ruling it that way now. That
you cannot fit it, or
that it cannot fit. Yeah, that it is penalized, which is sad. I gotta.
Can you put it sideways? If you put it sideways on the deployment zone?
No, I think ITC is a little bit. I don't know who is making this call exactly, but I got a message today from a TO who said that he got an email from the ITC saying that this is the way the ITC is doing it. So
that's the only model in the game that cannot fit a deployment zone. So if you use that model, you cannot deploy it on the first round. Is that the ruling?
Well, yeah, you can deploy it, but it just counts as moving its full distance, and it cannot shoot or do any actions, whatsoever. So, I mean, there's a couple of other units that have the same issue. There are a few other units that have the same issue, but to me, it is a clear misunderstanding of the rules, and I think the reason why it's going this direction is largely, political. I don't think that they're going, we really want to interpret the rules to the best. I think it is a political move at this point. I think there's a lot of other, and with politics, it's always a complexity. But yeah, for me, like I said, it's just more of an opportunity to learn some of the other tools better. Like I said, I've never used Alaris before, so here's an opportunity to use Alaris. It's helping me expand my repertoire. I guess it's motivating me to do that a little bit more so. But it is a nominal swing in my opinion. Like not being able to shoot with the Ares gunship turn 1 is kind of nominal. I've had a lot of games where it's just done nothing in its shooting phase, and doesn't do anything then because it doesn't hold objectives. So, to me, it's a political thing. People want to establish the authorities that be, they want to establish their reputations, and currently it's been decided that this is the best way to do that. So, that is what it is.
It's a shame because I watched your video about the explanation and the rules, and it just speaks to me. The rules say it, and it's
very clearly, they are very clearly rearranging the rules to like I said, fit a certain outcome. And that's, to a certain degree, that's their prerogative. It's their tournament circuit. They can do that,
There's a slim chance that.
I don't know, but that's their prerogative. And, if I want to play in the ITC, I ultimately, yes, I have to adhere to their interpretation of the rules. That's the reality of it. So I've said my piece. I've made my arguments. I've had the conversation with enough people to kind of know why people are making the decision or why they're going that route. And it is what it is. I think it's going to blow over in 6 months or less.
There's a slim chance that it will show up on GW FAQ, but I wouldn't count on it. And good advice is probably for anyone going to a tournament to ask a TO if you want to bring Ares. What's the deployment? What's their take on the deployment?
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, GW, they're, because they've they've kind of entered into sort of a partnership with the ITC. They brought them in, to basically develop 9th edition rules, especially like the grand tournament packet and stuff. So I think they're cutting their losses and going, okay, this situation is what it is now. We don't want to discredit our partner by coming out on the side of one or two guys who happen to play this really expensive model. We're not really going to lose too many sales, but if we suddenly incense the ITC, or a bunch of people who see it as an unpopular decision, to me, it is a monetary equation. It is politics,
Yeah, I hate politics in the games. All right,
yeah,
we can,
whatever, man. I'm cool with it. I got opportunities.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sunk on it. Even with that ruling, I do plan on playing the Ares gunship, at some point in the future, But I would like to just,
it is a fun model to play with.
It's a great model. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Moving that piece of resin. Yeah, it's really enjoyable experience.
It's challenging. It's a challenging model to use.
Yeah, it is.
You really do have to think through the maneuver of it, and the allocation of its fires. Like, it is a challenging model to use, and that's why I've enjoyed playing with it. That's why I enjoy learning to play with it. But it is what it is. So I'm switching mainstream for a little bit. I'm going to try out the Alaris bomb this coming weekend and see how that goes. So wish me luck.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Ryan. Thanks for today, and we'll get back to that in 2 weeks.
That sounds great, Marcin.
Okay.